Alright guys, welcome back to the all-new DVTV. I'm Matt.
And I'm Shaun.
Today we're going to talk about the history of Kenner Star Wars, kind of the rise and the fall. Go through the whole Kenner story. We got Shaun here. Shaun's, I've been doing toys my whole life, and Shaun is probably the most knowledgeable Kenner Star Wars person I've ever met. So we're going to just, while we have him here, we actually have almost every entire Kenner Star Wars figure right here behind us in the store in our AFA museum. So we're going to kind of try to use those two things to bring you a different, unique twist, and maybe you'll find out some things you didn't know about the Kenner Star Wars story. So we all know how it started, right? So the movie comes out, 77. Star Wars, the license is offered to Mego. Mego passes because they have the Micronaut license. Is that right?
That's right. They already had a toy line.
They already had a
gold.
And I don't really see the similarities between Micronauts and Star Wars. I mean,
well, I guess in their defense, Star Wars was a space opera.
Right. I mean, it was an unknown property, and they didn't know. So I guess, and Mego was like the king of the action figure world, right? Mego had all the licenses to DC Comics and Marvel Comics, and they made the Wizard of Oz figure. The Micronauts. They had all the television shows that were out, like Star Trek and Happy Days, and what's the one with Paunch? Chips. So Mego was pretty much the heavy hitter. There was always Mattel that had Barbie and Hot Wheels, and Hasbro had G.I. Joe, obviously, but pretty much.
They
had the
12-inch one,
yeah.
yeah.
So would you agree that pretty much Mego was the top dog in the action figure world?
I'm glad they passed on it. I don't know if I'd like Star Wars with the little...
Yeah. You kind of got
like
it,
the
right?
time traveler.
Yeah, I don't know, especially those. Those are real weak. So, Mego passes on Star Wars, and the license is given to Kenner, who hadn't really done a whole lot leading up. Would
you say he kind of looks like Darth Vader, trying to get the last punch back at him?
Maybe that's why. I mean, there has to be a reason.
And they're just firing missiles like, oh!
Yeah, there has to be a reason why they passed. I don't see it, but... so Kenner gets the license. Kenner hadn't really done a whole lot before Star Wars, right?
Yeah, they had to get the ball rolling. They were like, let's get some board games and coloring books out.
Yeah.
And let's brainstorm and get some toys out.
Well, that's a good point, and that leads us into our first thing that we're going to talk about. So, Christmas of 77 comes around. The pictures and everything has been released. Everybody knows what the figures are going to look like, but there's no figures to be found.
Kenner, just sketches, right?
Yeah, just drawings. So Kenner wasn't able to get the toys to market by Christmas time, which is obviously the most important time for selling toys. So instead of being able to get these toys to market, they came up with the idea of the early bird package, right?
A promise.
A promise. So can you tell us like what the early bird package was, what was included, and things like that?
It was basically like a envelope about that big, and they basically had like a little cardboard display with 12 pegs, a little coupon, a little fan club patch, and a sticker with R2-D2 and C-3PO and May the Force Be With You decal, and basically you just threw some money in there and sent it off, and
it was a promise that would
you may or may not get it. Maybe.
As soon as the figures were released, you would get the very first one.
That's right.
And which figures were they?
They were Luke, Leia, R2-D2, and Chewbacca. And
those were the original 4 Star Wars figures.
Yes, sir.
In the early bird kit. Now, one thing, when they first started making the Star Wars figures, after they were released, or leading into their release, they had a lot of problems, right? Like, there were a lot of things that they changed early on. The first thing that comes to mind is the double telescoping sabers, right? Which the early bird, were they all double telescoping sabers, or just like half of them, or?
Well, in the prototype stages, they had like a mushroom tip, and that was basically like a little ball on the end of the lightsaber, so it was easier to grab and pull out. But I think that started breaking.
So a double telescoping saber, for people that don't know, is normally it pushes out
all the way down to the...
We actually have one for sale on the website, but we can't really... So it pushes out once, just like all the rest of them.
The small tip comes out again.
And it extends
If you actually push the smaller tip backwards, it can come out, but I would not recommend that because they're extremely fragile.
Yeah, definitely don't do that if you
break
have
it. You just lost thousands of dollars.
Definitely don't do that if you have them. But the idea was, because if you look at these, the lightsabers aren't the right length.
Yeah, right? Like in the movie, I mean, it would go and then it would telescope again, kind of like in the movie, the hilt, and then it just goes...
So it was actually a pretty decent idea. It's just the lightsabers were so easily broken that...
And maybe it wasn't cost efficient.
Okay. So they originally released the DT Sabers very early on, and they very quickly got rid of them, right?
Yeah, some were, very few were carded, and then later on with the early bird set, they came with the standard and the transitional ones. I mean, they did come with early bird double telescoping and just the standard saber as well.
So because of the early bird set, there exists a significant amount more of the Luke Skywalker DT.
Yeah, there's a lot more carded ones too versus
Okay.
the Ben Invader too.
Okay, and there's hardly any Ben Invaders DTs. So that's one of the things, that's probably the biggest thing that they changed. They also changed Han Solo's head. Is
Well,
that
let's
right?
stick with Luke real quick. He has brown hair too.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the variations. So, Luke, they had a lot of different, paint applications, variations, things like that. All right, so we just wanted to go ahead and lay out all the figures that we have here. So we have the original 12, right, which are...
Well, we only have 9 right now, but we'll go
Okay,
into
sorry,
that
so we
a
do
little
have
bit
9.
later on.
Okay, so we're just going to talk about some of the changes that they made in these figures early on. So the first one that comes to mind is Han Solo, who's right in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've talked about it. We're not 100% sure. I've seen a lot of conflicting. Nobody really has told me for sure if it's which one came first.
The chicken or the egg?
The chicken or the egg, or the
large head or small
large head or small head Han. Which one do you think is probably more accurate? I like the small head.
I don't know, I like the bobblehead.
Yeah, because he has a big head, and you guys have that
We do have that in common.
that brotherhood thing going on. So, Han Solo, they immediately changed the head, right? Pretty quick into production. Down the line,
Yeah, both were on 12 back.
both were released on 12 back. Down the line, I see you've got 2 Ben Kenobis. So, did they make a change? So they have a white hair and a gray hair Ben Kenobi. One of the other things that they changed was, let's see, we don't have them out here, but the Jawa changed, right? Can you tell us what change happened with the Jawa?
Yeah, these are the first 9, and then the later release was the last 3. They actually had a store display that said 3 new figures. And there's the Death Squad Commander, Sandperson, and Jawa. Then they also, the first one was the Vinyl Cape Jawa.
So originally the Vinyl Cape Jawa was released.
Mm-hmm.
And why did they change to the, it was because people thought,
Well,
here's what I've heard, that people thought they were getting ripped off because the figure was so small.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you look at this, I mean, why would I pay $3 and change or $2 and change for a figure that small?
Why do I have to pay you the same
So
amount
then they
for your
bulked
Jawa
him up
as
a little bit. He
Darth
got
Vader?
a little bit on steroids or whatnot.
Yeah, and they added
puffed his cape up.
So the Jawa then is immediately changed to
Mhm.
having the cloth cape from the vinyl cape. We've got both of them right there. One of the other changes, really the only other one I could think about, was Snaggletooth, who came with the Cantina Adventure set here. You can see the Snaggletooth on the cover. So what can you tell me about, what was the change there?
Well, they never really got a sketch or drawing, so they just kind of went with it and made him a
Kenner.
3/4 inch figure, even though he was more around 3 inches or so.
So the drawings that Kenner received from Lucasfilm just showed the character's head.
Yeah.
And they assumed that, like all the other characters other than the Jawa, it was a regular...
And they went with the
3/4
blue tracksuit instead of the red.
Right, because it was a black and white photo is what I've heard.
Mhm.
So they had a blue suit and a regular size figure, and it was supposed to be a smaller size figure
Silver
like the Jawa.
go-go boots.
Yeah, really cool, really fashionable
I like the
superhero
blue
style.
dude better.
I do too. So that figure was only released with the Cantina band.
Sears. Yeah, Sears.
Or
Sears exclusive.
sorry, the Cantina playset. So the Snaggletooth that was released on the card is the small
20,
one.
21 back. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the original line, right? We have the original first 12
yeah.
right here. After that came, obviously,
The next 9.
the next 9 figures of the original
Or
line.
8, and then you can mail away for the Boba Fett. And
That was
the
that was my segue. The last change was, so Boba Fett was the very first ever mail away figure for the Kenner Star Wars line. You had to mail in your proofs of purchase, and they promised you that you would get a rocket firing Boba Fett.
And everybody always says, like, oh, I got one. And
Everybody says, yeah, he's right. People come in and say that all the time. Oh, I remember that. His rocket shot out.
And they never melted out because Mattel had Battlestar Galactica. Kid shot a missile.
Shot heard around the world. The kid choked on the missile. Kenner immediately took the figures and glued. Is that right? They glued the rocket in. So the figures that you had are rocket firing Boba Fett's, but the missile was glued in.
Well, it was never drilled out, so I mean they never got that far. But they are sonic welded in place. I mean, you could. Basically, how to crack that open is to put your figure in like a pot of boiling water, put like a sock around and pliers and pop it, and it should pop open. Then you can take the missile out, but it's going to have a little attachment on there glued on. And I mean, you're just basically ruining a figure, but I mean, you can see that it's sonic welded.
You could see that it was a rocket firing Boba Fett. So Boba Fett was the last figure introduced in the original Star Wars line. Rocket firing Boba Fett changed. Is he the
never really existed and never left the Kenner plant? So if you were an engineer, then you put it in your drawer and took it home, and now they're worth about 20 grand plus.
So all the ones that have been released were all from Kenner employees, pretty much?
Inside Kenner, yes.
Okay.
So no one actually got mailed one.
Yeah. They were never, not even one was ever distributed to the public.
Nope.
Okay. So I guess that does it for the original Star Wars line. We got all the way to the rocket firing Boba Fett. After that came Empire Strikes Back. So we'll put these up and we'll put out a few Empire Strikes Back figures, right?
Yeah.